So time series a time series is a variable that consists of data observed over different time periods. And n is the number of periods of time that you have data for. Businesses use time series all the time. They might want to predict the future. They might just want to describe how a process is changing over time. If sales is increasing over time or decreasing over time, they might be interested in the factors that help explain those changes. And more in general, time series data is used in all sorts of other studies of other socioeconomic things. Okay, so the way that time series data is usually described is by plotting it as a line graph with time on the horizontal axis and the level of the variable on the vertical axis. And this just helps reveal how the variable changes over time. So here's an example, and these data were downloaded from the Fred website. This is the website at the St. Louis Federal Reserve Bank. If you've had macroeconomics, you know that there's 12 regional Federal Reserve banks, and the Federal Reserve Bank is the central bank of the United States. And one of the specialties of the St. Louis Bank is to catalog and display and distribute through download of all sorts of macroeconomic time series variables. And this is known as FRED, the Federal Reserve Economic Data. And we'll take a look at FRED in just a little bit to see how easy it is to download those data into an Excel spreadsheet, and also to observe it like this on your computer screen. But what I've done here is I've downloaded retail trade data. This is from department stores, and that's this blue line, and it's from 1990 to I think 2016, 2017. Okay, and then the red line is real disposable personal income per capita, and this is a pretty good measure of living standards and the amount of money that people have available to spend. So real disposable personal income per capita. Well, okay, so to get per capita, you take the total real disposable personal income and divide it by the number of people in the country, in the United States. And real means that this has been inflation adjusted. Okay, so from 1990, real disposable personal income per capita has increased from around 26,000 up to over 36,000. So that's a big increase in living standards in the United States. I guess one question these days is how that increase in money has been distributed. If it's typical for an individual to have their income increase by 10,000 from a base of 26,000 on average, or if most of these gains have gone to what we've been calling the 1% in the past 5 or 10 years. But nevertheless, income's been going up. That's clear to see from this time trend. And retail trade at department stores went up from 1990 until the recession in the early 2000s. These gray bars indicate recessions. And then since then, it has been falling. Okay, so the question is, why has retail trade at department stores gone down while income has been going up? And it seems like if there's more money, if there's more income, then people would be buying more at retail stores. I think the answer is probably obvious to y'all that people have been doing more online shopping, and maybe the trigger for that, online shopping became available in the early 2000s, late 1990s, early 2000s. And maybe the trigger for that change was this recession. But the answers to these time trends isn't the purpose of this course. What we're going to try to understand is how to analyze these trends. Okay, so next let's think about a little bit about notation. So we all know what we're seeing in the book and what we're talking about. So we're going to use Y to express our time series variable. And T is the, T is the index. So sub T, Y sub T is an index denoting the time period. So time periods go from, begin at time period 1, all the way up to N, which is the number of time periods. Okay, and then Y sub 1 all the way to Y sub N is the data set for analysis. Okay, and every data set has its own what's called periodicity. Okay, periodicity is the time interval over which data are collected. And time series can be decadal. And last night, me and my family filled out our census form. So the U.S. Census is conducted every 10 years, and every 10 years worth of data comprises a time series of the variables that are included in the census form. Okay, data can be collected. There's other time series that are collected in between a year and a decade. I think the American Community Survey might be collected every 3 years. There's other big national surveys in the United States that are collected between somewhere between an annually and every decade. But annual surveys, the periodicity is a year. Quarterly, there's quarterly data, monthly data, there's weekly data. I think we'll look at gas prices that the Energy Information Administration assesses weekly. You can get daily data, hourly data, and data by the minute these days. You can get, especially with what's these days called big data, you can get data by the minute. Stock prices, or usually you can get those by very frequently. So stock periodicity for stock prices would be in here in the minute, hour, day. Yeah. Okay, and thinking about periodicity, so the time series data is measured at some point in time. Okay, so stock prices. You might have a data set that has daily stock prices, and you have the opening price and the closing price. Okay, for longer intervals, for data with longer periodicity, the time series data is measured over that interval. Okay, so it's important to determine whether the number that you see at the different periodicity is measured at the end of the interval, the beginning of the interval, or some average over the interval, or the midpoint of the interval. Okay, so we'll also look at gross domestic product in this lecture, GDP. Okay, that's the flow of goods and services measured over a quarter. It's measured quarterly, and it's also presented annually.